If I walk out of here, hopefully somebody can take my place. Starting with substitute resolution RS 2018-1507, a resolution requesting that the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County refrain from providing economic incentives to Amazon or to any other entity unless and until employees of the Metropolitan Government receive cost of living adjustments. Do I have a motion? We have a motion properly seconded. It's my understanding there's been an amendment filed on the bill. Do we have a motion to move the amendment? Moved, properly seconded. Mr. Jamison, could you explain the amendment, please?
Certainly. The amendment would simply specifically reference Alliance Bernstein among those entities for whom an economic incentive may be anticipated in the future.
Mr. Glover, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Well, so I feel comfortable. I hope we're going to support this. And while it may be a non-binding resolution, I fully understand that. I think it also sends a very important message to the employees and to everyone throughout Metro that we take seriously the pledge that we had made to them. And so if this passes, then I fully intend on supporting the other bills because they both work in unison. We have to, it's my opinion, we have to keep the foundation strong in the city. First responders, teachers, all of those things in order to make all of this work. Because if we don't do those basics, then we fail and then everything kind of crumbles. So I hope and I will encourage that this pass unanimously. And again, while it may be, you know, it's not required, it's non-binding, but I think it does send the right message out. And so thank you, Chair, for letting me speak.
Councilmember Pridemore, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've discussed this until it's been discussed. I mean, there's nothing that, it's been dissected enough that there's nothing left unturned. And what my colleague has said is totally accurate, and I just believe we were sending a message to our valued employees that we value them more than the incentives. So I also encourage that we move this unanimously. Thank you.
Councilmember Dow.
Thank you. This is, and I think I've said this once before because we all get a little bit confused about every time we have these incentives come up. I think it's nice to have this little resolution, but the reality is last year we could have honored our agreement again to do the cost of living adjustments. I don't know if some of you missed it or not, but we had an opportunity to. We voted and we voted not to. So the people that are enthusiastically putting these resolutions attached to other incentive agreements, I think they're sending the wrong message out to the public because we had an opportunity to do the cost of living adjustments, pay the police, fund our schools, and all of that. From the leadership of this city all the way down to this council floor, people voted no. And many other people sitting in this room endorsing these pieces of legislation voted not to do it. And so I think we have to be careful. I understand the desire to tie incentives to you know, wages and funding our government, but I think on the other side of it is it's not we do this to do that or either or what have you. We can do both, but we chose not to fund the employees. It has nothing really to do with economic incentives. It has to do with we chose not to fund them. We put other things as a priority for them. And these incentives are not like cash that's sitting in an account somewhere. And I say that in public because I want the people in my district to understand who call me and think that we have this cash pool of money that we're giving to them. They don't understand the concept of how this money is derived. And so they think that we can take this money and give it to the teachers when this money really does not exist yet. So with that being said, I'm probably not going to support this because I don't think it needs to be tied to anything. I think we need to have a resolution to just say that we're going to fund our teachers, and that's a priority, and fund our government no matter what, period. And that's just simple. We don't need to tie it to anything. So thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Chair. pretty sure everything that was said of all the speakers was true. I'm going to go ahead and support this just because, as the, I guess Councilman Glover said and Pridemore, that it is sort of a message ordinance, and I just want to make sure the employees know we're working on it. We haven't forgot about them. The COLAs are important to us. As was also said, I would love to have my cake and eat it too. And, you know, I feel good about what we tried to do last year. And I also feel like these are some worthy incentives we have coming up. We're not doing incentives as often. And I feel good about voting for the incentives. And then as far as this measure, I just think it's a good message, ordinance or resolution for the employees. So I'm going to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. We're voting on the amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? Now we're voting on the bill. All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. Resolution RS 20191559, a resolution modifying the master list of architects and engineers originally approved by resolution number RS 941050. In a motion? Properly seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? You would recommend. Resolution RS 20191609, a resolution authorizing an economic and community development incentive grant to the Industrial Development Board of Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County for the benefit of Alliance Bernstein, LP. Moved and properly seconded. It's my understanding we have two amendments and a late filed amendment. Mr. Jamison, would you like to explain the first? If I get a motion on the amendment. Properly moved and properly seconded. Mr. Jamison. Oh, sorry, brother.
There are three amendments in the packet labeled A, B, and C. Amendment A, offered by Councilman Cooper, would essentially extend a request to the Convention Center Authority to extend an allocation similar to the allocation they made this previous budget season this past summer, the approximate amount of $10 million pursuant to an MOU, requesting that they implement through the same mechanism an allocation equal to the incentive amount involved in this economic development. The second amendment, Amendment B, was submitted timely in your packet this morning and is on page 8 of your amendment materials. And it would correct or update the Exhibit E to the proposal, which is in keeping with the Do Better Bill provisions from the ordinance led by Councilman Davis last year, requiring several pieces of information from companies seeking information. Amendment C is late filed, would technically require suspension of the rules tomorrow for consideration, but is essentially an updated version of what is in Exhibit E.
Thank you, Mr. Jamison. We have two members in the queue. Councilmember Henderson, is this on the amendment?
No, sir. It was intended to be a point of order or an amendment on the last bill because there was an amendment for the previous bill to which you did not invite Mr. Jamison to similarly explain the various amendments. So just as a point of order, I was wondering why you didn't mention the amendments on the last bill.
And Councilmember Henderson, I apologize if I did not ask him. I thought we had taken up that amendment last time, and I will let...
What I would suggest, Councilor Henderson, there is no requirement that the committee, you're fully entitled to offer the amendment at the full meeting tomorrow, so this doesn't preclude you from offering that amendment if you're so inclined.
I appreciate that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Cooper, on the amendment.
On the Amendment A, I was just going to move adoption and to note that 2 weeks ago this was Amendment B, and now it's Amendment A. And I appreciate the administration's view that they are comfortable with the amendment and consistent with the action that the MCC took last June in awarding Metro $10 million. And ultimately, I don't know, we need to continue the discussion by which legal authority is being invoked for that transfer and use a similar one for this. Thank you.
Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks. On Amendment A, I guess I am interested in hearing the administration's perspective of whether they're in favor or indifferent or against Amendment A.
Councilman, we are comfortable with Amendment A. The mayor's in discussions with the Convention Center Authority, and we are willing to continue discussions regarding this amendment.
So what does mayor's in discussion with Convention Center Authority mean?
I can have more information for you with that. I'm not in all the conversations with the mayor that he has with the Convention Center Authority, but I'm willing to get back to you and get more information for you.
All right, well, just in the vein of transparency, so since November, I've been trying to figure out the legal mechanism by which the $10 million came from the Convention Center Authority last year. And it took from November until about 2.5 weeks ago to get an answer on that. And then since then, I've been trying to figure out what it means in terms of dollars, because if before last summer, the idea was that there was never, ever, ever any way to get money from the Convention Center Authority. And then, $10 million got shaken loose, which sort of begs the question, like, what's the total number? 12 million, 15 million, 20 million, 30 million, 80 million? And that answer is unknown right now. Which I think is why Amendment A has to be drafted in terms of asking the Convention Center Authority. My understanding is that hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll get answers to the questions that have been pending since November about how much money is available. And I'm assuming that's what you mean by mayors in conversations with the Convention Center Authority.
Councilman, I know that the Convention Center Authority is working on answering those questions and trying to identify specific sources of revenue to specific payments. As you know, there are, I think, 8 sources of revenue for the Convention Center Authority, and each of those 8 has different state law and bond covenant requirements for what the money can and can't be used for. And so they are working on coming up with that methodology and answering those questions. And the mayor has been in discussions with them about that issue and those questions.
Well, and I guess that's really what I'm trying to pin down is, like, I'm aware of that sort of ongoing effort to figure out what the legal mechanism was last summer and what the total amount that's available under the bond documents and applicable law. I'm just trying to pin down that that's what we mean by mayors in discussions with the Convention Center Authority.
That's correct, regarding the use of those funds and how much is available, correct.
All right, thanks. So on this amendment, I'm torn because on the one hand, it sets up a mechanism to ask the Convention Center Authority, pretty please, whether money can come over. But at this point in time, Metro doesn't have a position, the administration doesn't have a position, the Convention Center Authority doesn't have a position about how much money is available annually. And I definitely recognize that it's a complicated topic. I know smart people have been working on it since November, but I have a hard time being on board with the amendment when we really don't even know whether what the amount is that could possibly even hypothetically be available to come from the Convention Center Authority. But on the other hand, all it does is set up an ask. So I lean against wanting to support this, but I suspect a bunch of the committee is in favor of it. Thanks for answering the questions, administration table. Thanks.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of in the same vein as Councilmember Mendez. I appreciate the creativity in trying to find ways to keep these incentives from being a burden on taxpayers, and I think that's a good motivation. But I'm confused about the ground that we're basing this on. I mean, in the recitals, it says, whereas the bylaws of the CCA provide that among the purposes for which they're organized is to operate to promote tourism and business opportunities, and that's in quotes, like this is a business opportunity, but it says through accommodating conventions or other means. And it feels to me like we're stretching what the language is simply because we've got a large pot of cash sitting somewhere. I saw a very definite connection with the overtime for police because they were doing things directly related to tourism and things that the Convention Center Authority was doing. This seems like a farther stretch, and I would likewise be, I'm just slightly uncomfortable with trying to base drawing income from this on that type of basis. So I'm still struggling with this.
Councilmember Glover.
Thank you, Chair. I want to go just a little bit deeper on the questioning of this, if I may. Mr. Jameson, under this amendment, you and I spoke about it briefly this morning. Under this amendment, there's not a legal obligation from anybody to provide money. Is correct?
If the amendment were adopted, it would simply result in a request to the Convention Center Authority, so correct.
Okay. And for me, it doesn't really make any difference if they give us 10 million or we're able to get 15 or whatever the dollar amount may be that's available, because ultimately, did the money last year go into the operation budget, the operating budget?
As far as I know, it was to the general fund, the operating budget of the general fund.
Okay.
Yes.
And so were we required under that provision, however we did it, because I'm interested in seeing legally how we're able to do this as well, were we required under that provision that what they gave us, we had to directly tie it to convention and tourist activity?
Turn on, John. Turn on.
Yes, those funds were essentially to reimburse Metro for costs that it had incurred related to convention center purposes and events.
Okay.
So that was the nexus.
And if they wouldn't have, and I think I know the answer to this, but if they would not have provided those funds, we would have had that expense anyway, and we would have had to have paid that expense anyway.
Correct.
Would we not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one way or another, even though we may have to tie it to a specific event or events and activities, that probably is not a far reach given the amount of growth that we've had with tourism and conventions in the city. So here, I'll try and close with this one question to expand a little bit upon what some of the other council members have asked. Are there provisions inside of this? And I know you say there's 8 buckets of money out there, or 8 places that money comes in. Are there provisions very similar to that of requirements from the state that say, hey, on reserve funds, schools as an example, if it drops below 3%, you can't take money out of it anymore for operational? Do the same type of things exist for this funding as well? And if you don't know the answer right now, it's fine. I just would like to expand the original question to include that answer also.
Sure. I know that the bonds require a certain minimum coverage and some, so the waterfall in the bond covenants would have that. But yeah, we can get that for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Cooper.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. I want to follow up and thank Councilman Mendez. This is very important to understand the legal authority behind the $10 million. And I think that establishes a framework for the city going forward about what is available and not available. And this amendment formally structures that inquiry so that by the time we get to the FY20 budget, we will have a better idea of what could conceivably be available. There's another question also that I would like to add on to Councilman Mendez's request. Is the legal theory behind the $38 million parking garage that the MCC is building at 5th and Broadway, because that clearly also is for economic development. And so I think expanding on the legal theory behind that also informs the rest of this amendment. That if you were spending $38 million in economic development, and I think that answering, I think Councilman Allen's quite excellent question, that in the authorization of the authority is implied an economic development activity by the authority, that it is both employment opportunities and business opportunities. And I imagine that that's how the $38 million was appropriated already by the MCC for the parking garage. But then this amendment formalizes the inquiry and the answers to that. And then again, and I appreciate Talia nodding, by the time we get to FY20, hopefully we'll have clear direction. And then if it is permissible under these legal constructs, under this interpretation, then hopefully that money, having spent so much money on economic development on this site, that then the $3.5 million of Alliance Bernstein perhaps can also be spent by the MCC if it's legally appropriate. And then that would save dollar for dollar from the general fund those expenses in the out years. So with that, I appreciate this. I'd like to add to Councilman Mendez's request for legal clarification. And then again, appreciate people supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I support this amendment as well. I appreciate Councilman Cooper's work on it. I think I appreciate Councilman Mendez's questions, and then the questions that are just, very much a part of the amendment. I think if we look at the cumulative incentive amount over 7 years at $3.6 million, and then comparatively look at that and the way that we've, pulled other funds, that I think this is a good amendment, and I support this incentive with the amendment, but I cannot support the incentive without the amendment. Thank you.
Councilmember Weiner.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question, and then I want to make a comment about the amendment. My question would be to Mr. Cooper or someone up at the table, insofar as we have some questions surrounding financial allocations from Convention Center. Is it possible, and I know this has been floated out there, but I'd like some public clarification so others can hear it, to talk about the size of the zone downtown whereby the monies get funneled over to the Convention Center, and the ability or the lack of the ability to shrink that zone so that more of the monies come to us in the general fund, please.
So when the TDZ boundary was set, it was set in accordance with state law and then approved by the state as to those boundaries. I do not know what would be involved in amending that, especially since the revenue from that district is what was pledged for the bonds. I think you could get into an issue if you changed while debt was outstanding.
Has the size of the zone changed over time since? Okay. Okay, well, that certainly is important for us to have out there. I do support this amendment and thank Councilman Cooper for putting this together. I think it's a step in the right direction. What I would like to see, though, moving forward is that we find a consistent mechanism, as we have spoken about, to cover our convention center and tourism-related expenses. And that would be a great way to support our police, fire, and infrastructure needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't originally supportive of this necessarily either, but if the administration is sort of not opposed, and I guess through these legal explanations, I'm hearing the worst they can say is no, essentially, in response, as it's more of a request. I just wanted to, so I guess I'm pretty much in support, more in the middle on this, but I'm open to supporting. I think the good thing about it is it's open. I mentioned this to Councilmember Cooper opening up a conversation and sort of a dialogue there, and we can figure out, with so much economic activity in those different revenue funds, that sort of thing, City, everything that's happening in Nashville and how hot Nashville is, a lot of that action is right there downtown, and we have a lot of tax funds going into the authority there. So in my mind, I guess at least it's sort of opening up a conversation and a dialogue about that. So if the administration isn't opposed to it, then I guess, it may not be a harmful amendment. Thanks.
Councilmember Mendez.
Just two quick things. I do think, I guess I'm not wearing my lawyer hat today, but I think the bond documents would make changing the size of that zone really difficult. I do want to add on to Councilman Cooper's adding on to my questions. On the parking garage spend, it feels like it's only relevant to the extent that it's using convention center authority revenue to build it. If they're just incurring debt to build the parking garage, then it's apples and oranges to the conversation we're having here today. But I don't really know how that's being created. If the convention center authority had a pile of money that it had saved up that it was using to build a parking garage, then it's relevant to this conversation. If they're just incurring new debt to build it, then it's not. All right, thanks.
Seeing no one else, we are voting on Amendment A. All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. Moving on to the Second Amendment, we need a motion on the Second Amendment. Moved properly second. Gotcha. So council was explaining to me that we have Amendment B and C, and C is just updating Amendment B. So it's just, I guess, a technical correction, so to speak, to Amendment B. So we're on Amendment B, seeing Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. Just a question about Amendment C, which is, I guess, all part of the Marvelous Do Better bill. The commitment to local hire, is that addressed in the amendment? And then workers who reside in Davidson County, is there a specific commitment to hire people from here in that amendment?
Mr. Jamison.
I will share with the council that I have reviewed this once and focused on the highlighted provisions. It does appear that they are addressing, as best as they can tell at this date, projections as to the local hire. What appears to be on page 3 of the materials you should have, not including the cover letter, there is this paragraph. Please note that of the approximately 200 current employees, approximately 60% currently reside in Davidson County. Of those 200, 140 are new hires that were not relocated from New York. Alliance Bernstein anticipates a majority of their total population in Nashville will be sourced with local and new hires. Alliance Bernstein will aim to hire a majority of new hires locally from Middle Tennessee, posting and sourcing locally first for the positions, and then nationally if a local hire cannot be found.
So I apologize for follow-up. So as the lawyer, or one of the many lawyers in the room, to what degree is that a commitment?
It's not a specific number. I think that's as specific as they could provide as of today.
As of today. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Mendez.
Yeah, I guess it's just a point of order. So the Amendment C, the late filed, is the thing under the Waller cover letter?
Correct.
All right, just making sure that that's our official version of the amendment.
Correct, and I understand that to be to the exclusion of Amendment B.
Okay. The confusion was I'm not used to seeing them with law firm letterheads on top of them.
That, and I apologize, what you have is the late filed amendment, and because the cover letter from the presenter explains that the distinctions are highlighted. We wanted you to have that in the same packet.
All right, thanks a lot.
Councilmember Dow.
I just had a quick question, because we've looked at some information before about what hiring local is. Do we have like a definition as far as what constitutes? I know like a transfer could be somebody they hired externally from another state that moved in, but is there any further definition about what will constitute a local hire? Is it somebody that lived here in the last year, or is it somebody that moved here 90 days ago and then they accepted a position on this date? So how do we define what constitutes a local hire? I was just curious about that.
So under the so-called Do Better ordinance that Councilman Anthony Davis led last year, the specific language that is to be provided by applicants states, this is in section B1, the type and number of jobs that will be created both during and after construction, if any, by the qualified company, including whether those jobs will be temporary or permanent, and the number of identified jobs that will be filled by Davidson County residents. And that is the extent of the language. Residents typically does have the intended meaning that you are legally domiciled in Davidson County. You intend to reside here, you get your mail here, you're a registered voter here, and so forth.
Okay. Well, I guess, if I relocated from New York here, I would get my driver's license, all of that here. That would constitute me being local based upon that definition. So that really, it's kind of a loose definition of local. And the only reason I ask is we've been looking at how many, getting this information about prior incentive deals, because one of the things that I hear a lot from many of the constituents, and I'm in tune with this, is that the people that they hire are not necessarily local people. And based upon that definition, I think they want people who are living here in Nashville, been here a while, and they're looking for a job and out of work, versus someone that graduated from another college, lived in New York, moved to Nashville to accept a position here. And so once they're hired, they would have Davidson County address, Davidson County driver's license, or what have you. So even if they transferred here, they would be local based upon that definition, as long as they met those requirements.
Seeing no one else in the queue, we're taking up Amendment B. All in favor? Oh, my apologies. Correct. Correct. Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Yeah, I was just going to throw out there, we will have to suspend the rules tomorrow. And again, this is just making sure we get that latest report, which, I feel we got even more information on this round, and hopefully everyone's had a chance to take a look. But just to make sure that latest exhibit is in the amendment. Thank you.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering what the mechanism would be, maybe down the road. It may not be appropriate to apply it here for us to, I think, kind of deal with the issue that Councilmember Dowell has brought up with regard to local hire. Is that something would that need to be an amendment to the Do Better bill, or is that language we could include in here if Alliance Bernstein is comfortable with that? What are our options?
I think the first option, just for cleanliness' sake, Council Lady Dow makes a good point that someone could move here and within seconds be deemed a Davidson County resident, and so maybe put some sort of duration requirement on it that they have resided here at least X period of time before eligibility. Otherwise, adding that as a requirement to this, that'd be a late filed amendment, suspension of the rules, and subject to Alliance Bernstein's ability to comply.
Gotcha. Okay. We got.
Councilmember Mendez.
Just because our friends up the street, I'm sure we're not going to require local hiring. At most, we would have to put a definition of what we were asking people to disclose in a do better bill, because we would certainly not want to interfere with interstate commerce by requiring anything, right?
The Tennessee Contractors Licensing Act, among others, puts some strict provisions on what we can and can't require, and that's why the do better bill phrases it in terms of information provided by applicants.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we're voting on Amendment C. All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. We are back on the bill as amended. Councilmember Glover.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make this very brief. So we're obviously stepping out on a leap of faith to a degree. We have non-binding with the COLA. This will be binding. If it passes tomorrow night, it is binding. And so I think the key thing is if we support it and this passes tomorrow night, it's critical to know this is your one bite at the apple. I mean, we've got to do the other things that make sense. So, you know, I feel comfortable with the conversations I've had with the administration that we are going to be looking at everything and accommodating. The final question, Mr. Jameson, I don't remember, and it's probably in the analysis, and I can't get my computer back up right now. When would the first payment on this be due? If they invoked it, what would be the earliest?
So my understanding is that the build out, you're looking at roughly a 2-year period. And then the way these incentives work is that I think it's by February of the preceding year, the company submits to essentially our finance director, here are the number of full-time equivalent positions that meet your requirements, and then that's the basis for the calculation. And because that would not happen until they are essentially up and operating and staffed, I think you're looking at fiscal year 21 at the earliest, 22. 22, 23. Before you'd have the first obligation under the incentive grant.
Okay, and so from that standpoint, it makes it easier for me to say yes to this because we have said yes on the cost of living, because that would go into effect next year. So I hope that people will realize, however you interpret the cost of living adjustment, you know, this is something that I think is good overall, so thank you.
Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks. Since we met a couple weeks ago, I mean, there's a couple things that are going to make me vote in favor of this that I want to just mention, and I won't belabor it. One is that while the company, it's been preached to us, and we've preached that economic incentives are supposed to pass a but-for test, that but for the incentive, the company wouldn't come to Nashville. And because we've had 10 months since the announcement of this last May, it does make it hard. I'm sure all my colleagues have had conversations out in the community where it's a little bit of a tough sell that to pay money to a company that's already here. That said, the company only does have about 200 people here, according to the exhibit that we just approved. And I believe the state incentive covers 840 jobs, whereas the Metro incentive covers 1,050. So the only incentive for the last couple hundred jobs is the one that we're considering today. And so I want people who are watching to know that the but-for test still applies, even though this has been delayed for some reason for 10 months before it comes to us. And then I guess the other thing I want to mention is, and I think some of us have said it, and it's worth repeating, AllianceBernstein is, by all accounts, a great company, kind of company that we want in Nashville, genuinely civically minded individuals working at the company and as a company. One of the things that frankly has made it hard out in the community is they've already dove in and are supporting a lot of our nonprofit organizations in a material way, and all indications are we're going to see more of that. So I know we're all glad to see them here, and I think this the relatively small incentive we're doing hopefully does provide the incentive for that last couple hundred jobs to be moved here. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
We're on the bill. All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. Next bill, Resolution RS 2019-1621, sponsors Virtue, Withers, and Roten. A resolution amending the pay plan for the general employees of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, excluding employees of the Board of Health, Board of Education, and the Police and Fire Departments, approved pursuant to Resolution RS 2018-1247 by adding the positions of Community Oversight Board Executive Director, Community Oversight Board Assistant Director, and Community Oversight Board Legal Advisor. To have a motion? Have a motion properly seconded. Councilmember Glover.
Just very quickly, Mr. Jameson, on this, I guess in reading the analysis in the bill that passed on the COB, there was a dollar amount that was set, and so we're operating within that the voters approved. I don't want to assume it. I think that's right, and I would just like confirmation, please.
Presumably, but Presumably, but keep in mind that this is not an allocation. This is simply creating positions within the pay plan. This does not set their actual salaries and make expenditures.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. Resolution RS 2019-1622, Virtue and Glover, resolution approving a grant for the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County to the United Way of Metropolitan Nashville to provide pre-kindergarten services to advance high-quality early education practices as key levers for early student success and literacy attainment. Got a motion properly seconded? All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. Resolution RS 2019-1623, Virtue, Syracuse, and Roten, a resolution accepting a grants package from the Friends of Warners Park to the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Parks and Recreation to provide staffing for the Warner Park Center, Nature Center support, and the SWEAT program for additional labor for summer maintenance. Can I get a motion? And properly seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. Resolution RS 2019-1625, sponsors Virtue and Roten, a resolution authorizing the Metropolitan Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of, I hope I don't mess this up too bad, Albafazo Rezai Dashti against the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County in the amount of $8,250, and that said amount be paid out of the self-insured liability fund. Can I get a motion? Moved, properly seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You recommend. Moving on to bills on second reading.
You've got one more.
Oh, apologize. It's the same. I'm sorry, y'all. Resolution RS 2019-1626, Virtue and Roten, a resolution authorizing the Metropolitan Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Beiruz Rezai Dashti against the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County in the amount of $12,500, and that said amount be paid out of the self-insured liability fund. Your motion. Moved, properly seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. Moving on to bills on second reading. Bill number BL 2018-1404, Roten, O'Connell, Johnson. An ordinance amending section 6.80.550 and section 12.08.150 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to remove certain storage and impound fees for recovered stolen vehicles. We've been working on this bill, and I know Councilman O'Connell has been working on this bill to get it to where we could actually work with it and vote on it. I don't know if I got a motion. Can I get a motion? Moved, properly seconded.
You may want to defer one minute.
And I just wanted to get in front of it so I could actually talk about it. So, but it's my understanding we've got it kind of worked out a little bit, and so hopefully once Councilmember O'Connell can be here and kind of explain to us what he's been working on, we can work on it a little bit more. But I'm going to be asking to. We're going to defer it for one meeting, and then hopefully between now and the next meeting, we'll know what's going on with this. So I'm moved to defer. Hold on just one second. I got somebody in the queue popped up. Councilmember Allen.
Actually, I was going to ask for a point of personal privilege to introduce somebody in the back, so you can decide when
You
it's
can take all the
appropriate to do.
personal privilege you want.
Thank you very
Councilmember
much.
Allen.
We have a new employee at MDHA, and I would like to ask if Mr. Jim Harbison could introduce that person to us.
You're recognized. Sorry, hold on. There you go. Sorry about that.
No worries. So thank you, Councilmember, thank you for letting us come up. As you may recall, Angie Hubbard left MDHA about 4 months ago to work for the state of Tennessee. I'd like to introduce her, the new Director of Community Development, the funds, Community Development Block Grants, your home funds that are run by MDHA. And Emil, if you'll come up and introduce yourself.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Emil Alexander. I have worked in housing and community development for the last 18 years. Most recently, I was the president and CEO of a community development organization in Baton Rouge. I'm excited to be here in Nashville, excited to work with the community development team at MDHA, and I look forward to working with each of you to make an impact here in Nashville. So I'll be around after the meeting to hand out some of my cards and look forward to learn about you more.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't think we ever got to the deferral. We had a motion for deferral and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? You defer one meeting. Bill 2019-1521, Councilmember Kendall. An ordinance providing the honorary street name designation of St. Thomas Midtown Way for the portion of 20th Avenue North. Can I get a motion? Moved, properly seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend. BL 2019-1522, Wiener, Vercher, and others. An ordinance authorizing the acquisition of certain rights-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for use in public projects of the metropolitan government, initially for purposes of Public Works Department, project number 2017R30, Highway 70 South Sidewalk Improvements, proposal number 2019M005ES-001. Can I get a motion? Moved, properly seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? You recommend, and we are adjourned.
All the way through.